In 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 this podcast, I will be talking about bass fishing Toledo Bend, how to fish pre-spawn the way that we did it, and that's pretty much it. Going getting Toledo Bend, fishing bass, sounds good, and that is what Toledo Bend is known for. It is known for its bass fishery, and it is a enjoyable bass fishery, and it's a nice balanced bass fishery. Like Okeechobee, for example, a lot of what you hear about. I've never been there personally, but a lot of what you hear about Okeechobee is it's a giant grass bowl, grass for miles. Which, if you enjoy punching, sounds great. But if you do not enjoy punching, you sound screwed. But Toledo Bend has dock fishing. It has cypress trees, submerged trees. It has grass everywhere, so it has a nice mixture to it. Even even before the weather started warming up here in East and South Texas. So yeah, we had. So that's basically what I'm going to talk about. Pre-spawn. We were there right before the weather started warming up. Curses, because otherwise, a month later, it'd be that much more enjoyable to go out. Weather would have been nicer, but we had the time we had. So well. So, with that being said, first things first, the gear you will need. You will need anything. You will need 3 rods, three combos. Probably will serve you well. It was too early to go frogging, otherwise I'd call it a 4th. But if you're traveling, 3 rods. 1, a medium light spinning setup. Not only be your crappie setup, but also with the 6-pound or 8-pound leader, it will also serve as a finesse largemouth outfit, which I actually used a good amount. 2, you're going to want a medium casting outfit. This is going to be your hard bait set, jerk baits, top water. This is how it normally function, by the way, for my bass fishing. Jerk baits, top waters, heavy finesse stuff. So like finesse creature bait fishing type deal. I'll talk about that later. What I could have done now that I know some of the tricks that I've learned now locally here. And third, being a medium heavy. This is what I threw my spinnerbait on, flipping creature baits, Texas rigs. That's going to be a 30-pound braid to like a 15-pound leader. You could. There was no need for 20, honestly. We weren't ending up catching that big a fish that like we needed 20 to muscle fish out, but you could throw on a 20-pound leader too if you wanted to. So about a 30-pound braid, maybe even 50 to a 15-pound leader, and those are the 3 different kinds of lines. First one's a spinning setup, medium light, as I mentioned before. 6'6" is what I have for it. 6 foot 6 inches, not the 6 sticks. For those of you know the brand, and on top, and then medium was a 6.5 foot medium, but rarely got used. And the third one is a 7 foot medium heavy bass rod, as I mentioned. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm not specific on gear ratios or anything else like that. So those are the 3 setups I'd recommend that you bring to wherever. Universally good bass setups to bring anywhere, honestly. Like if you bring those 3 to a bass fishing trip, you are basically set, except for maybe super thick stuff with a frog, which we didn't need. I tried a little bit, but there's honestly no need. I didn't catch any fish on it, so I'm not recommending it. That is being said. So, rods, reels, lines, all that good stuff is now covered. Lures. What were we using? First off, finesse-wise, the 2 people I was with, they adore the Wacky Rig Trick Worm. I joined them on it to some degree, but I wanted to experiment as well. So I did a mix of both. So Wacky Rig Trick Worm's a good one that we were using. We all caught fish on that. I converted one to Nico Rig, and I was using that for bed fishing. That's a great option. Let's see. Spinnerbait worked. Creature bait. And then he was even talking about the grandfather I was with, that basically he was talking about you could theoretically fish the open water with like a jerk bait because there's grass. It's just under the surface at that point. So those are just some options of baits that we were using to fish this area. It was a lot of flipping and pitching I'll get to later. So, you have now obtained your baits. And what I would basically recommend is switch it up. If you have 2 guys on the boat that are other than you, so say 3 guys tops, make sure you're trying something different to some degree. So like there are certain times where I was throwing a spinner bait while the other 2 guys were pitching their trick worms. And it allowed me to make casts cover water that I normally wouldn't be able to do fishing from a boat. And if you're not used to fishing from a boat, power fish. That is what I now have a new understanding for power fishing, because you have to keep moving even if your boat's drifting slowly. Versus from the bank, when you're bass fishing, you could just take your time at a spot, pitch it thoroughly, move 10 feet down. So I'm going to go into that right now. What we were targeting, it was a pre-spawn pattern. We were playing around with the grass from the outside of the coves, fishing shallow, from the very back, from the very front of the mouths of the creeks, very front of the coves, and we were going all the way in. Sometimes we would go as far back into a creek as possible and just see where the fish are. Each day we would do that. We would take up a spot and we would just see where the fish are. We'd just mess around a couple different spots, but it was the same idea. We were looking at grass that was basically at the surface, a submerged grass of various sorts that was at the surface, surfacing to some degree. It's like a hydrilla type grass. And we were basically making pitches into this for the most part. Some spinnerbait action, as I mentioned. And that was more or less it. And some catching some trees, but that's a whole different story. So that is basically and that was mostly what we did. And that is the name of the game that time of year there. We were just pitching grass mats. That's it. That's where the wacky rig came in play. And sometimes we could point out fish, like, oh, there's a sight fish. I had trouble doing that just because I was used to fishing. Understand, before that, when I used to fish for largemouth in California, I used to fish water that was a freaking swimming pool. Like, this water usually was super crystal clear. Most people hate it. I love it, which is why I was fishing 6 when the other guys were fishing 12, when I probably should have fished 12, honestly. So I was fishing 6. And honestly, fish 6, by the way, if you never fished before for largemouth, it's a fun fight if you get a 2.5, a 3 on 6-pound test. So I would take the 6 and I do the wacky rig trick worm on the 6, and that is fun. And sometimes they'd point out fish to me. I'd get all the way back in there, let them eat it, and now you're trying to horse a fish way back in the sticks on 6. And yes, I did land a fish doing that. So you can land fish on 6-pound test going 15, 20 feet back into sticks and bushes. Now, if you're doing this from the bank, if you're fishing from the bank doing this, have in mind that is a completely different world, because the grass that we were fishing just stuck out so far from the bank itself. The bank, you couldn't even see it. There were so many trees at these spots so far back. If you could try to fish the bank from that side, go for it. Definitely fish 15 at that point, because there are so many trees back there that if you were to try to fish that, you're gonna want 15 just to pitch in there and have something to muscle with. Anything shorter, or anything lighter, excuse me, maybe 10, but if you hook a nice 5 on 10, I would not place bets on it. 15 and pitch, and I just go with pitching a creature bait. I caught a fish doing that as well. Pitching, a creature bait on a text rig worked well for us. We didn't use that much jigs, and normally he doesn't use jigs, so, and I never use them, so we never actually got around to using jigs, so I can't vouch for jig fishing. That more or less covers this. That more or less covers basically what we did. That was it. It was just fishing grass, trick worms, various kind of plastics. Other thing, I've been getting into this. Comment down below if you have done this before. Flipping a Nico rig. If you have not, leave a comment saying I have not done this. Make a video on it, and I will be open to making a Nico rig video, like everything you need to know about Nico rigs, because I've been getting into it, and that is fun. And that's what I'm referring to by heavy finesse. All right. So leave that comment. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. See you guys around.